I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
So I've really been meaning to make this video about why I like Donald Trump, and I've decided I'm gonna have to do two separate videos on him because there's so much going on with this election. It's not just him, it's all the cultural Marxists, their little war with the feminists and the social justice warriors and free speech and everything in Europe with the migrant/refugee invasion, the EU, the Brexit vote. I mean, we really are living in very interesting and historical times. The fate of the Western world really does seem to be hanging in the balance, and it will be decided within the next several months. All these things are connected in my mind, but I'll have to get into all that in the next video. First, I just want to talk about Trump and why I like him as a candidate. And, this is just my opinion. This is what I think about the guy and what I think he is bringing to the table. But before I get into Trump, I just want to take a quick look at the past of Hillary and his past, Trump's past, and Obama's past. And starting with Obama. Now, there's a reason I'm doing this, so, bear with me. Now, this is a guy who coasted along his whole life from one cushy gig to the next without ever having to do any real work, anything substantive. And after graduating Columbia University, he went back to Chicago to become a community organizer. And I gotta tell you, I'm hearing that term more and more these days, community organizer, and it's never associated with anything good. Like all these Black Lives Matter activists, the Al Sharptons, it's just, ugh. So after organizing his community, Obama went to Harvard Law, where he managed to become president of the Harvard Law Review without ever having to write a single law review. Now, how the fuck did that happen? Well, some of you may not know this, but the political correctness revolution actually started back in the early 90s. It lasted a few years, but it got old real quick and it went away. They didn't have the internet back then. That's what happened. So here's a quick look at Harvard in the early 90s. See if you notice anything familiar. It seems the students were upset that the professors were trying to work their game, work their little hustle, because there weren't enough black female tenured professor. Remember, tenured is the important part there.
He's taking a leave of absence until the school tenures its first black woman professor.
Dean Clark has this new campaign fund to build a new library to make this a better place. If he really wants to make this a better place, he'll have more diverse professors.
I think that Professor Bell has set an example for all of us. I've been here for 3 years. I have no role model. There is not one Latina professor here. There's not one Latino professor here. And for me, that's important.
For the past year, students have staged sit-ins at the dean's office over the issue of minority hiring, an issue that's been festering in this ivory tower for nearly 20 years.
I remember him sauntering up to the front and not giving us a lecture, but engaging us in a conversation and speaking the truth and telling us that he has to.
Oh man, does history repeat itself or what? So this was the atmosphere on the Harvard campus at the time when Obama managed to become the first president of the Harvard Law Review without actually having to write a fucking law review. But that's alright, because he was also the first African-American president of the Harvard Law Review, and you best believe it is the latter that matters in that equation, and not the former.
Well, Barack becoming the first African-American president of Harvard Law Review was received extremely well, with a lot of pride.
Well, you don't say. It certainly was a big deal. It was national news, and old Barry knew just what to do with that newfound fame. He managed to parlay it into a sweetheart book deal, getting a $100,000 book advance to write a book about race relations. But he didn't really feel like writing a book about race relations, so instead he wrote Dreams from My Father. And, in fact, he didn't even really feel like writing that book, so he got his pal Bill Ayers to write it for him. Remember that guy?
About the Pentagon and Tom.
I wrote it.
What's that?
I wrote that.
Yeah, we know.
You wrote that?
Yeah, and if you could help me prove it, I'll split the royalties.
Yeah, good luck with that, Bill. And from Harvard, Obama went on to teach constitutional law at the University of Chicago for 12 years. You know what they say, those who can't do, teach, which seems true in this case, as Obama never seemed to actually practice law at any point. He managed to get a very sweet deal on a house thanks to this guy, Tony Rezko, who went to prison for real estate fraud or whatever the fuck it was. You know, that's just how they roll in Chicago. Chicago politics, the most corrupt politics in the nation. And from there, he went on to become state senator, then U.S. senator, and the rest is history. Now, while he was senator, he voted present 130 times. And just one more example here. The year he became a U.S. senator, he was able to get $1 million earmarked for the University of Chicago Hospital, where his wife Michelle just happened to work. It's just total coincidence. And for some reason, her salary went from $100,000 to $300,000. Weird, right? And as I understand it, it was, wasn't even really a job. They pretty much a no-show job. Michelle didn't really have to do any crucial duties or anything. Vice President for Community Affairs. Ooh, that sounds like a sexy, pointless title. After Michelle left, the title just evaporated. They didn't fill it. It was they didn't refill the position. So anyway, there it is. This guy really did coast along his whole life. I'm not kidding there. And somehow he ended up here. It's really quite astonishing.
I'm getting ready to do something too. I'm running for president.
And moving on to Hillary. Oh dear God in heaven, the fucking mountain of corruption from this woman. The greed and lust for power that embodies Hillary Clinton is staggering. I can't even get into all of it. It would take forever. But here's a list of 21 scandals involving her. I'll leave a link to a site that goes over each one of these scandals in detail, and also a documentary that covers her past. There's a lot of documentaries about her on YouTube you can find. I suggest you watch it. It's truly frightening. Because, it's not just the money and corruption. It's the way the Clintons, steamroll over anyone in their path. And I'm talking about, like, individuals, normal people, not public figures. All the women that accused Bill of rape or sexual assault, and, people that are just inconvenient and in their way. You can see it all in the documentary. So, needless to say, the way that they got rich was less than ethical. A bunch of, influence peddling, sweetheart deals, the speaking gigs where, they get piles of cash for doing speeches, and, it all goes to the Clinton Foundation, their tax-exempt charity of corruption. The Clintons have taken money from the Saudis, from China, from Dubai, just anyone. In the subtle words of Clay Davis, they'll take any motherfucker's money as long as he's giving it away.
You think I have time to ask a man why he giving me money or where he gets his money from? I'll take any motherfucker's money if he giving it away.
Yeah, well, I don't.
So she's got a very impressive record of corruption. I can't go over all of it. I'll just go over a quick example of the type of crony capitalism they practice. When Hillary and Bill left the White House, they were broke, as she put it. But that's fine because she got a pretty sweet book deal with an $8 million advance. The record at the time was $8.5 million. And then 14 years later, she got a $14 million book advance. And there's basically no way that the book publisher made their money back on that one. They did not sell anywhere near enough copies. But that doesn't really matter because at least they bought a little political capital. Hey, Hillary might be president one day, and she'll remember who her friends are, right? Yeah, once she gets up there in the White House. So all these scandals and corrupt deals, it's the type of shit you can get away with when the media is just completely in your favor. That's the real thing here. It's the fucking media. That site, moveon.org? That site was literally created to get over the Lewinsky scandal. It's literally move on. Just forget about that shit. Move on. It's amazing. This woman is under criminal investigation by the FBI right now, facing possible indictment, and she's running for president. It's just unfucking believable.
The experience was a major event in my career because it taught me that powerful politicians can misuse law enforcement authority almost whimsically. And because it was the First Lady ordering the investigation, well then charges have to be found. That scared me. That was different from my experience in the FBI of 26 years. I thought if we have reached the level where a politician can get irritated with somebody and cause them to maybe end up in federal prison, we've got a serious problem.
Apparently this is what passes for presidential material in the United States. Kind of sad. These people are sociopaths. They don't care about the United States or its people. They care about power, and if piles of cash just happen to fall from the sky right into their laps, then I guess it's just a perk of the job. Alright, so now that I got that out of the way, let's move on to Trump. It's no secret that he was born into wealth. He definitely won the parent lottery, that's obvious. He was one of 5 kids, and his dad was a very successful real estate developer. Now, it's really easy to say that Trump was just born with a silver spoon in his mouth and all that. You know, not that it isn't true, but his father was not born rich. His father, Fred Trump, started with nothing and built a real estate empire. And he went out of his way to teach his kids about hard work. That was very important to him. His daughters worked at banks and department stores, and his sons worked with him in construction and real estate. So that was the type of environment young Donald grew up in. You know, I don't see any reason to hold that against him. You know, his father did well and taught his kids to do well. Of course, if we're talking about this guy, then yeah, we're going to hold that against you, Jonathan. But that's not Trump, because Trump doesn't play the victim. He just moves forward in life. So after he finished college, everyone assumed he would just go to work with his dad. You know, that would have been the safe bet. That would have been the easy thing to do. I mean, why the fuck not? You know, pretty much guaranteed to be rich for the rest of your life. But he didn't do that. Instead, he went out on his own. He wanted to make a name for himself. At 28 years old, he set his sights on the Commodore Hotel on East 42nd Street in New York. The hotel was going bankrupt, and Donald Trump managed to secure the necessary financing. He got a guarantee from Hyatt to run the hotel once it was completed. He got tax breaks from the city and completed the whole thing in roughly 4 years. And this was his first construction project, and it was a huge success.
In 1974, at the height of New York City's financial crisis, Trump started talking with the bankrupt Penn Central Railroad about the seedy Commodore Hotel above Grand Central Station. At age 28, when most people would be worrying about buying a house, Trump was pushing a concept that seemed impossible, using a combination of family money, $45 million in loans, and a proposed tax break to finance his first deal.
It's a classic example of when you're young, sometimes you're not smart enough to know that something can't be done. And Donald never for a second thought it couldn't be done. And he made it happen.
So that's what Trump was doing at this age, while Obama was busy shaking his fist in the air at the Harvard administration saying, "You guys are racist." Trump was busy creating thousands of jobs through construction and all the people who would work at the hotel, a hotel that still to this day employs hundreds if not thousands of people. After his success with the Hyatt Hotel, Trump solidified his name and reputation and began building his own empire that would far surpass his father's. He was and is an entrepreneur on an epic scale. He had many failures, but even more successes, which I always love when people point this out, like it's such damning evidence against him. You know, well, Trump had a bunch of failed businesses, you know. Right, so is this the standard we're judging people by now? I mean, absolute perfection. Not every single thing he did was a success. So, what a fucking loser. I mean, for Christ's sakes, you know, that's typically what it means to be an entrepreneur. You keep trying until you succeed. Failures are a part of life, but, you know, the social justice regressive crowd doesn't know that. The participation trophy crowd. You know, just like when Trump had 4 of his hotels and casinos go bankrupt, his whole empire almost came crashing down, but he persevered and made it through. So this is what Trump has done with his life. These are the things he has created across the country and across the world. Hotels, casinos, golf courses, beauty pageants, TV shows, a couple dozen books, and all the rest. These are very real, tangible things. Trump is not just some hedge fund money manager sitting back getting rich off, you know, stocks or whatever, money manipulation, someone like Warren Buffett. He's a builder. Now, I know it doesn't quite compare to fighting imaginary racism at Harvard, but it's still pretty good. And as for Hillary, why don't we take every one of her scandals and put it side by side with one of Trump's accomplishments? For every one of her scandals, Trump built a hotel. He built a golf course. So, there's that.
A lot of people ask me, do we have to go through all these old Clinton scandals again? Well, I have good news for you. You don't, because you can look at the new ones, because Hillary Clinton's scandals are a gift that keeps on giving.
So I think it's a serious question to ask. What exactly is presidential material? Is it measured by your capacity to be corrupt? By how much of a bullshit artist you are? How well you can race bait? How well you can lie to crowds of people? How much you lust for power? What exactly does qualify one to be a politician? As far as I can tell, it really just comes down to diplomacy. I mean, what else do politicians really do if not work with people all day, networking, management skills, representing large numbers of people? I mean, people say Trump doesn't have any experience. He does all of those things. He networks, he makes deals, he certainly knows the ins and outs of dealing with government, and he's spent a lifetime doing all that. He's made deals all over the world. He's dealt with foreign governments. So just what kind of experience does a politician have that Trump doesn't? I mean, he's also got a lifelong record of kicking ass and taking names, so, there's that. And all those tax dollars that D.C. politicians like Hillary and Obama just love to throw down the drain and, spread around to all their cronies. Yeah, well, Trump personally generated billions upon billions of those tax dollars for decades. So there's that. Now, there's one more of Trump's accomplishments I want to go over because I think it's very interesting and it's very relevant. So back in the 80s, New York City was attempting to refurbish the Woolman ice skating rink in Central Park, but thanks to typical government incompetence, the whole thing was over schedule and over budget. Several years, $11 million, and nothing. That's government for you. So Trump stepped in and said, look, guys, just, why don't you let me take over this project, all right? And just skip all the red tape, skip all the bureaucracy, all right? I don't need any profit. I'm not doing it for that. I'll do it at cost. All right, just, I'll get it done. Just let me do it, all right? Just let me do it. Come on. So he took over, and he got it done. $4 million, and 3.5 months later, that shit was done. So I think this is very telling, because Trump didn't do this for profit. He did it to prove that he could. He succeeded where the city of New York failed. This is where his ego is at. He's always looking for the next challenge, the next project. And now New York has an ice skating rink. He likes the feeling of being able to point to something and say, I built that. I did that shit. Everybody likes that feeling. And this is what he's done his whole life. He just keeps moving on to the next project. And one of the things he specializes in is taking something that is failing and turning it around into a success. He buys failing buildings and turns them into extravagance. He steps in where others have failed. He's always looking for a new challenge, and now that he's accomplished as much as anyone could ever hope to accomplish in a lifetime, he's looking for the ultimate challenge, fixing the United States federal government. And what a mess it is. Can he actually put a dent in fixing what no one else has been able to do? Washington has become a cesspool of do-nothing politicians who don't seem to think budgets matter. Well, go visit this website. This is our national debt clock. Don't think this matters? Don't think our economy can collapse? Well, it happened in the 30s. It just happened in Greece. There's a quote by Einstein that goes, any intelligent fool can make things bigger and more complex. It takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. Well, what do you think? Is Trump just going with the flow? Or is he going in the opposite direction? Going against the grain? Doing what's difficult? Is he saying what everyone wants to hear? Or is he saying what needs to be said? What no one else will? What the elites do not want him to say? I'm really fucking tired of politicians, and I think everyone else is too. And when I look at Trump, I see a guy who really doesn't care about politics. He has a very business-driven mind, a logistical mind. The only thing he cares about is what's the problem, how do we fix it? Here's what we need to do, how do we get it done? That's it. He just wants to fix our country. You think he cares about political agendas the way Obama or Hillary care about all these, phony agendas that seem to be permeating throughout the country these days? You think you're ever going to catch Trump talking about the imaginary gender wage gap? You think Trump's interested in race baiting? Not a fucking chance. This is a guy who gets shit done. He's been getting shit done his whole life, and that's why I'm not concerned at all about him becoming president. I welcome the notion because I really believe this guy actually loves this country, and he truly wants to fix it. And that's why I'm voting for Trump, and why you should too.